This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
How communications technology is changing the business world. From Cox Communications, Cox Business Senior Vice President Phil Meeks on this edition of Conversations. No one would dispute that technology is changing and evolving at a record pace, and staying up to date with the latest forms of communications is a job in and of itself. For ordinary consumers, it may be as simple as iPhone or Android, Kindle or iPad, much of it based on personal preference and/or brand loyalty, and perhaps budget. But for business, the stakes are much higher. They must navigate the latest technology trends with a longer view, attempting to avoid overnight obsolescence, but at the same time being out in front of their competition. Phil Meeks has seen the telecom industry evolve quite a lot over his 28-year career. Meeks launched his career with AT&T Information Systems and the old Southern Bell. He also spent 20 years with MCI. These days, he runs the fastest-growing business inside the Cox Communications empire, Cox Business, a billion-dollar division for the Atlanta-based company. We welcome Phil Meeks to Conversations. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jeff.
Before we get to where we are today with technology, let's go back a handful of years. What was the triggering mechanism that took the telecom industry from kind of your old utility type company to sort of a modern day must-have?
Great question, and the simple answer is regulatory change. But probably the answer behind that answer is consumers demanded change. They demanded more choices. And you're right, back in those days, telecommunications companies were utilities. Right. So you fast forward to today, telecommunications now are technology enablers, both for consumers in terms of entertainment, for businesses in terms of access to information that's critical to them run their businesses more effectively. So over the 28 years I've been in this industry, I've seen tremendous changes. I think another key point is that the technology changes are occurring even more rapidly as years go by, year over year.
Yeah. I was sharing this story with you in the green room prior to the show. I had a cousin that worked for the old Southern Bell, and I remember him having one of the first touch-tone phones, right, and talking about if you hit the star and the pound, it was going to do this and that. And you're like, what? Right. and here we are already.
Seems like ancient history.
It does, and it wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
How will wireless play into the future?
I think wireless is a big component of every telecommunications company's overall strategy. What customers want, or whether they're consumers or businesses, what they want is access to information anywhere, anytime, over any device, and really mobility is a key enabler of that, particularly when you look at integrating mobility into the wireline infrastructure from a business or for a consumer.
Now, as far as the cable industry is concerned, because traditionally you guys were thought of, okay, I plug it in, I get my television show. Right. So how did you come about expanding your communication services?
That's a great question and a really interesting story. So Cox Business began providing commercial services 18 years ago in our Southern Virginia office. And we really were doing this pretty much off the side of the desk. In that time, our core business was residential cable services. So some really smart person way back then had the idea of we're building infrastructure to get to neighborhoods and houses, and we're passing businesses along the way. Right. And way back then, 18 years ago, high-speed internet was just becoming a product for consumers and a product for businesses as well. So someone had the great idea, as we're passing these businesses, why don't we repurpose our infrastructure and provide some basic data communication services to small businesses.
And what kind of data? When we say data communication service, that seems to me like a big umbrella. What's in there?
At that point, it was primarily high-speed internet. Mm-hmm. You know, companies then were just beginning to harvest or harness the strength of the internet and really understanding that the internet was more than just a hobbyist tool. Right. The internet was truly an enabler again to help them run their businesses more effectively. So obviously, customers back then, as well as customers now, look to the internet for access to communications, email, storage, content delivery, all those type things.
Let's talk storage for a second, because one of the buzzwords that we hear an awful lot out there these days is cloud computing. First of all, what is it? Right. And second of all, how is it going to change the landscape?
Right. So if you ask 10 people what cloud computing means, you'll probably get 15 answers.
Okay.
I'll give you mine. Okay. What cloud computing really does is it's hosted applications up in the cloud. That's the name cloud. Right. Hosted applications in the cloud that deliver content or applications to businesses or consumers whenever they need them.
Okay.
The key point is this for businesses in particular. If you host those applications in the cloud, you don't have to absorb or invest the capital if you're a small business to have those applications on site. And most small businesses don't have IT expertise. They typically don't have an IT staff. So what we're seeing is small businesses looking for partners like Cox Business to host those applications that really are the mission critical applications of how they run their business, host them up in the cloud, and we deliver those applications to them so you pay for them when you use them.
Right.
And we make sure that all those applications are in sync with the proper version of this and the proper version of that as well. So in a nutshell, that's cloud computing.
Is this going to give the smaller business a better opportunity to compete with the larger guys?
I think it will. I think it will. Again, a couple of benefits to small businesses. They don't have to pay the capital on the front side. It allows them to use that technology and have someone else really manage that technology for them, so they can be focused on their core business and be focused on what they need to be doing, which is running their business as opposed to worrying about the technology.
Right.
And again, as we talked about earlier, the pace of technology change just continues to accelerate and accelerate. So put yourself in the shoes of a small business owner. Technology is coming at you so quickly, you know you have to harness it to run your business more effectively, but you really don't know what that means.
Right.
So our strategy is to host those applications, deliver those applications, and really demystify technology and simplify it, make it easier for customers to leverage that technology.
Yeah. Now, we hear talk about you'll be able to go out on the cloud and get certain software applications and things of that nature, not just storage. So expand on that. What is that going to mean?
Well, you think about small businesses and what they need, or large businesses for that matter. You need access to information about your employees. You need access to information about your customers, your balance sheet, so basic P&L kind of spreadsheet stuff. We can host all those applications in the cloud, and we'll deliver those to the desktop, right? So we'll make sure that the software versions of the customer relationship management software and the employee relationship management software is all in sync and in sync with each other and secured in an online way that you have disaster recovery implications. You have the ability to run your business wherever you are. Your information is there for you to use.
So like for the people that recently had the issues with tornadoes and of course in Florida, hurricanes and things of that nature. But we also hear, a lot of times you hear in the media that, Google knows too much about me or this company knows too much about me. Is that a concern for a business or, for that matter, an individual?
I think businesses are more concerned about security, but security obviously has implications on privacy.
Right.
So the key is, I firmly believe that if you harness that technology and you host that information in the cloud, if you do it the right way, and we're committed to doing it the right way, if you do it the right way, it's more secure with the proper password authorizations put in place, the proper firewalling off of information so people only have access to the information that they need. In my mind, that's actually more secure, and with the proper firewalls put in place, more guarantees of privacy as well.
Interesting. We were talking earlier too off camera, just talking about how the media business is changing. Right. Traditional media, radio, television, newspaper, and of course Cox is, for people who don't know, owned the major newspaper in Atlanta, the major television, radio stations and things like that. In your judgment, how is the technology that we are starting to implement daily now going to change the traditional media business?
I think it already has, and you're right. Cox Communications, which I'm part of, is owned by Cox Enterprises, $15 billion privately held company. We have holdings in radio, television, as well as in newspaper. And we've seen a shift in terms of people's consumption habits. That's not unique to us; the whole industry has. And what people are really looking at is how do you monetize the new media model?
Right, and that's been the challenge.
That has been the challenge. And one of the things that we're doing corporate-wide is looking at our radio properties and our TV properties and our newspaper properties really as an integrated source of information and really combining and integrating those into business units. And we made the announcement to do just that, and we combined those three business units into one called Cox Media Group. Okay.
Are people going to pay? The newspaper business, I think, probably made the mistake of giving out content for free.
Right.
Now, I know, for example, maybe Rupert Murdoch to some degree, and also New York Times, they're going to want to start charging for that content. Do you think they're going to ultimately be able to do that?
That's a great question. And it's difficult once you open Pandora's box and you provide something for free. It's different to monetize it after people are accustomed to having it for free. I think, however, it's all about the quality of the content.
Right.
and the delivery of that content. So I know as a consumer, I will pay a premium for content if it's the quality that I expect, if I have access to it the way I want to receive it. I think there is the ability to remonetize it. And I think, frankly, it'll be necessary, particularly for the newspaper industry, to figure that out and remonetize that and make that into a profitable distribution channel.
Because, you know, a lot of the media guys are saying content is king, and the delivery method is basically going to be agnostic,
right,
along the way. So when we talk of high technology today, what are some of the delivery methods that we are seeing and that we're going to see moving forward?
We talked about a lot of them already. You know, the concept of having a centralized place where content is hosted. That can be business content or that can be consumer entertainment content, and then driving that content out of a cloud or what common infrastructure via every mechanism that's out there, via wireless, via wireline, via Wi-Fi, and transport becomes the delivery mechanism of that content.
Comcast, and which may or may not be a competitor of yours in some markets, recently merged with NBC or bought a huge portion of NBC, presumably for the content.
Right.
Is it going to be important for companies like yours, or for that matter AT&T or whomever, to be in the content business as well as in the delivery business?
Right. In our view and in our portfolio mix, I think it works very well. We've made the decision not to be in the content business. As a matter of fact, we've divested content companies out of our company. And we are very much focused, though, on the Cox Communications side, how we thrive and how we take advantage of the emerging opportunities around consumer entertainment on the residential side, as well as business information on the business side.
You know, one of the things that you hear an awful lot of talk about is how we're going to access, you know, movies and stuff. And of course, Hollywood is just going crazy, I guess, because they're afraid that they're going to lose, you know, a certain amount of movie revenues.
Right.
You're a technology guy. How are we going to start seeing, how am I going to watch a movie in the future?
I think we're already beginning to see the future right now. So when I flew down here last evening, you know, I had content downloaded on my iPad, right? And I was not unique and alone on that.
Right.
People are given so many choices now in terms of how they want to view content, and it's the responsibility of technology companies like Cox Communications to deliver that content, fresh content, the right kind of quality content, really to you any way you want to receive it. So we don't yet know where that's going to eventually go in terms of emerging technologies, but some of the things that are happening are fairly obvious now, which is more integration of wireline and wireless. Again, if you're in your home, you probably want content delivered to your big screen.
Right.
If you're on an airplane, you want it delivered to whatever screen you have in front of you. Right. If you're a business traveler, you have pocket devices. So, you know, those devices are proliferating. The technology is improving so dramatically, and the delivery mechanisms to support them are continuing to improve as well.
So am I going to be able to easily, and I know it can be done, but easily where it's not a hassle, hook my laptop or my iPad or tablet device, or for that matter, my iPhone, am I going to be able to hook that up where I can watch it on my big screen television?
Right. I think the future is here right now. But what we're doing as a company, and this is kind of interesting, because there are a lot of people like me and you who have a lot of technology, might not really know how to use all that technology.
That's right.
And we actually have a line of business called Cox Tech Solutions. And what Cox Tech Solutions will do is come in and into your home and tie all those devices together, tie your networks in together for you, because there are a lot of people that have certainly more money to invest in technology than the time to understand how to use it correctly.
Right.
And I think it'll be a very profitable line of business for us, because people again, whether they're residential or consumers or businesses, they want simplification of the technology.
With all this technology, what types of businesses have benefited the most in your judgment?
I think all businesses have. Technology 20 years ago, in my mind, was really focused more on the large enterprise businesses. Right. So I spent many years of my career at MCI, as you mentioned, and in that space, it was very much an enterprise kind of play. And telecommunication companies then, I think, were targeting large enterprise, multinational, global types of customers for where product direction would come from and what products they were delivering. And I think there was a huge missed opportunity for better technology deployment and leveraging technology for very small businesses. It's been a very, very underserved and overlooked market. Back to my business, Cox Business, 80% of our customers are very small businesses that we define as companies that have 19 and fewer employees. And that's the bread and butter of what we do. We really understand that small business marketplace. We understand that they have been, in fact, an overlooked marketplace, and we are simplifying technology and helping drive technology as an enabler to help them run their businesses more successfully.
Is technology such that I'm going to be able to better target someone, better target my customer base? And what would I use to do that, I guess, is the next question. Or how's it going to happen?
Right. Well, one of the ways we're kind of getting our hands around that is focusing on some key verticals, because all companies aren't alike, and all small companies aren't alike.
Right.
So we're looking at 3 key verticals to really build specific applications that will be technology enabled across the verticals. And the verticals we're looking at are government, education, and healthcare. And I think there's real power in focusing on those distinct verticals, because if you think about it, those industries use technology in very different ways.
Right.
So one of the key areas we're focused on is healthcare. Yeah, and everyone likes to talk about healthcare and where we're going as a country and where that is going as an industry. And here's what we know. We know the government has spent $17 billion digitizing medical records. So once medical records become digitized, companies like Cox Business then can really help manage that whole ecosystem of delivery in a secure way, back to privacy and security, in a secure way, delivering those medical records to wherever they need to be for payment, for diagnosis, for treatment, for distance learning, any of those type things. That broadband enablement of that, once things become digitized, I think will be very powerful and will completely change how we're practicing medicine in this country.
Yeah. Well, I guess too, and I heard someone in the medical field say this, that, you know, it seems kind of strange that, you know, maybe my Dr. A can't easily access what Dr. B has done. So this will bring it together from an integration type situation. Let's talk social media. Everybody's talking about Facebook. Recently there was a huge IPO of LinkedIn. Social media, is it for real? Is it a fad? Is it somewhere in between?
I think it's real and getting realer. Probably if you'd asked me that question a couple of years ago, I might not even know what you're asking. So it's changed very quickly in terms of what social media has become. And I think social media is becoming mainstream in the business environment. So we have a group of folks within our company that are focused on social media, and we use social media really to connect in different ways to our customers. So it's a great way for us to push content out to our customers, and more importantly, it's a great way for us to hear back from our customers how we're doing, what we can be doing more of.
And you expect, so you really expect continued growth?
I think it will. You know, again, you've got this whole generation of kids coming along or getting into the business world, and they're pushing really some of the social changes that are occurring, and I think that's a great example. Yeah.
Let's talk about the economy a little bit, because your business is diverse. I mean, in that you have markets from Southern California to Florida, Georgia, et cetera. What are you seeing as a VP of Cox from the economy? Are things getting healthier?
I think that they're not getting any worse. And I think in some markets they are getting better. And to your point, we're in some very diverse markets. We're in 18 markets around the country. So we are fortunate enough to do business in what were some of the very hyper growth markets around the country, Las Vegas and Phoenix and San Diego. We also are pretty diversified in terms of more stable markets that didn't have that big run up and did not have the corresponding run down. Such as Omaha and Oklahoma City and kind of heartland America as well. So if you look at, it's really two answers. It's a tale of two cities. You know, if you look at the hyper-growth markets, they've stabilized. I don't think we're yet seeing housing starts come back to anything like they were before in those big growth markets. But I think in the mature markets, I think they weren't immune from the recession, but they certainly weren't impacted by it to the extent the hyper-growth markets were. But I do think the short answer is I think most indicators would be that the economy is improving. We certainly would look to see more job growth in the private sector. Housing, I'm not an economist, my opinion. I think the housing market will have some time yet to sort through supply and demand.
It's interesting that you say there's kind of the tale of two cities, because there does seem to be a lot of haves and have-nots. There's a lot of companies and multinationals are doing very, very well. People who maybe have unique skills are doing very, very well. Do you think this unemployment, I ask you this as a business person who's been around for a while, do you think the unemployment that we have going on is more of a fundamental problem of just the way our economy has changed, as opposed to just a little economic dip?
I think it's both. I think what we've experienced the last couple of years, I would say, was probably more than a dip. It was
Right.
it was
Well,
yeah, it was a difficult time, and that obviously exacerbated unemployment. But I do think, and you ask a great question, I do think things have shifted though. And if you look at our country and our economy from a macro perspective, we've shifted from a services industry kind of economy to an information services type of economy. And we need to be certain that we're investing back in the infrastructure of our country and the infrastructure of our people in terms of education and skill sets and things of that nature. Because if we don't have a high level of educated labor pool, we're going to have, unfortunately, people who aren't equipped to play in the industries that we're playing in.
Right, and I think we're seeing some of that.
Yep.
How do you think that we as a society, though, it seems to me like those of us in business get that, okay? But it doesn't seem to me like the politicians perhaps get it. It seems to me like they sort of want to cook the same old thing over and over again. How do we convince them to start making changes?
Yeah, I got to think that our politicians certainly are intelligent enough to know that these changes need to occur. So in my opinion, it's not really about their understanding of the issue. It's leadership, and do we have the leadership to really take on difficult issues that are going to be running beyond the next election cycle?
Right. I agree. That whole time thing.
Right.
Something else is kind of interesting, just talking about the time and allowing time for things to develop. Your company was a publicly traded company for many years. Right. You went private several years ago. Mm-hmm. Advantage, disadvantage?
I would say, from my perspective, strong advantages, and here's why. Being a privately held company, you really have the ability to focus on your company and your customers and the market opportunity. And you really can make some strategic reinvestments back into the business to capitalize on longer term opportunities. And I've been part of publicly traded companies as well. And publicly traded companies are in a very different place with respect to the pressures that the shareholders put on them, the pressures that the street puts on them, the analyst puts on them, in terms of short-term results. Mm-hmm. And we're all focused on results. And privately held companies are focused on short-term results as well. But we do have the ability of really looking on a longer-term investment cycle to invest in things now that we know will reap benefits in the future.
Right. There is some consolidation obviously going on in your industry. We'll see if it happens. AT&T, T-Mobile, it's got to be approved by a bunch of government folks before it ultimately happens. Is that good or bad? Let me rephrase that. Is it good or bad, first of all, for the consumer?
I think the jury will be out in terms of that deal specifically, where that lands with respect to approval and what conditions are put on that approval. Mm-hmm. Clearly, there has been tremendous consolidation in the telecommunications space over the last 10, 15 years. But I do think, though, there are new competitors and new technology enablers that are coming into the market every single day. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you have these big utilities that we're down to a couple of big utilities. We have the traditional players and we have emerging players who really are looking at how they harness technology and deliver technologies in different ways, similar to what we were talking about before. Competition's good. Right. Competition makes companies like ours better. We love competition. Mm-hmm. Competition's good for consumers. Competition's good for businesses as well.
Yeah. So will be kind of interesting to see what happens with this ultimately.
Yep.
Let me switch gears here on you for a second. I know you're involved in kind of some interesting things outside of the telecommunications business. I know one of the things very much in conservation, water conservation. Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate to be on the board of directors for a small nonprofit called Safe Water Now. And it's an interesting story of how we got into this. My wife's a potter. And she became friends with a lady at her pottery studio who was involved in Potters for Peace, which is a group of people that go around the world and try to figure out how to develop repeatable water filtration systems in countries. So anyway, long story short, I got involved in that through her, and we've launched a small nonprofit called Safe Water Now. We actually have an operation in Tanzania. And the concept is pretty neat. It's kind of like a Brita recyclable filter, but it's made with clay from the local community, so it's sustainable. And the concept is you teach the local people how to manufacture the filtration systems, and then when we leave, they still have the ability of having sustainable access to clean drinking water.
Yeah. I guess we in this country kind of take for granted our water. How big a problem globally is the water situation?
It's a very, very large problem in developing countries. And it's a problem that's getting worse. I mean, if you look at population growth in developing countries, and Africa is probably front and center on this, access to clean drinking water is a major, major global issue. I mean, there are millions and millions of deaths that occur because people, children, adults, everyone, don't have access to clean drinking water.
That's a shame. Yeah. And how can the United States play a bigger role, you think, in changing that? Because that just seems like it would be easy to fix because we have so much great technology.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that are looking to do that. So, you know, the big organizations that are focused on this have a little different approach than the small ones, but it's great. I mean, more people should be involved in it, whatever way works for them. So, you know, the Peace Corps has been involved in water filtration systems for years and years in developing countries. And again, our take is just a little bit different in that we don't come in and build a complicated, filtering system. Right. We come in and show them how to build a very simple, personal-based kind of filtering system, so it's very much sustainable. But there are a lot of people involved in this. We would welcome more people to get involved in it.
Do you have a website or something people could go to if they?
SafeWaterNow.com.
SafeWaterNow.com or .org?
.org. Thank you. .org.
Gotcha. You've been in the communications business for a long time. I always like to ask upper-level executives this question.
Right.
If you were a young person, fresh out of college, what sort of industry would you pursue?
Great question. And that was conversations I was having with myself many years ago, right? And actually I had that conversation with my father and asked him, so what do you think? Where do I go from here? Or where do I begin? And again, that was about the time of divestiture of the original Bell system. And he said, you know, in my opinion, that is an emerging industry that's really going to have some explosive growth. So what I would counsel young people, first off, is follow your passion, follow something that you enjoy and love doing. You will never be as good at something as you should be if you don't have passion about it. So find something you're interested in, and find something that's on the front side of a growth cycle as well. So I'm biased toward technology companies, right. But I think there are tremendous, tremendous opportunities for people just beginning their career in the technology space.
And in just 2 or 3 bullets here, real quick, because I'm short on time, what are the most important skills a young person needs to take into the career world today?
I think basic communication skills, basic business judgment skills, and the ability to critically analyze complex scenarios and boil out of them simple solutions.
Enjoyed it. Interesting. Learned a lot about communications.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Phil Meeks, Senior Vice President with Cox Business, part of Cox Communications. Speaking of communications, well, you can communicate with us on that social media place they call Facebook. Just search out Conversations with Jeff Weeks. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. I am Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. Take good care of yourself, and we'll see you soon.
Support for this program is provided in part by these corporate sponsors. And by viewers like you.